everybody, and welcome to the latest instalment of the Ship Management International podcast. We're delighted to welcome today Dr. Jens Tülsner, the CEO and founder of Marine Medical Solutions, a company offering expert consultancy and management services to address the unique challenges faced by the maritime sector. Dr. Tülsner is not only a seasoned professional in the medical and healthcare management fields, but he also serves as a medical advisor to the German Ministry of Transport and Digitalization under the flag state authority. Now, we're talking with Jens today, Dr. Jens today, really on the whole issue of malaria, commemorate really World Malaria Day. And I think the theme for this year's World Malaria Day is Malaria Ends With Us, Reinvest, Reimagine and Reignite. And I think the theme really wants to highlight the need for continued investment, innovation and collaboration to end malaria. Yeah, it's lovely to have you on board today and thank you very much for your time.
I have to thank you, Sean, for the invitation. I'm really delighted to having been asked to participate in this podcast. Thanks a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Looking at malaria within the shipping industry and amongst our seafarers, how much of a problem is it in shipping, would you say? What are your thoughts?
Sean, let me start a little more generic. Everybody was very sensitive and alerted about the corona pandemic, but we often forget that there are still ongoing pandemics, and malaria actually is one of them. So it means that there are lots of cases worldwide of malaria and even fatalities. And this way they indeed, and unfortunately, they have an influence on the shipping industry as well. So every year there are lots of seafarers getting infected by malaria simply due to the limited resources for diagnostics and treatment on especially commercial vessels. It's still a problem, even if it doesn't occur very frequent, but it does and has the potential to really deteriorate in a very quickly manner. So it really becomes a problem for the ship and especially for the individual. And unfortunately, we do face fatalities even between seafarers every single year caused by malaria.
Now, the World Malaria Day, April the 25th, I mean, it's got as its theme, malaria ends with us, reinvest, reimagine and reignite. What do you think they're trying to say with that? Is it about highlighting, the real importance of dealing with this? I mean, issues like polio, for instance, because the world has really sat down and tackled it and, it's not a disease that really affects people anymore. Is that the same that can happen to malaria if the industry and its society reinvests and reimagines and reignites the activities to try to eradicate it?
I think there are different aspects to be taken into consideration. Let's say we know quite well about the infection, the way of infection. So it is a mosquito called Anopheles, which is the transmitter of the parasites, which is the cause of malaria. The name malaria comes out from mala aria, which means bad air. So the origin of these mosquitoes mostly is in very wet areas, and especially in the tropical and subtropical areas of the world. So there have been several approaches to get malaria handled. For instance, by getting these areas dried, for instance, or by using poisons against the mosquitoes to get rid of them. But indeed, you can imagine, and the more we look holistically on the world, it always has implications on not only on the climate, but even on the biological environment. So for malaria, the second is the awareness and how to protect ourselves against malaria to get infected. At the end, it's about how to avoid being bitten by a mosquito. Actually, one of the real crucial things people should be told or taught about, what measures are quite effective in getting this avoided. And then we come to the next steps of how to diagnose and what therapeutic approach can be used to get malaria handled in case the infection has taken place.
So looking at this whole issue of preventative action, I mean, that's all very, very important. And I know, when I was a young boy and I lived out in Hong Kong and places like that, we lived under mosquito nets all the time and stuff like that. It doesn't seem to happen anymore when we go traveling and what have you. But when you look at the seafarers and what should they be doing? What is the action? What are the sort of issues that they should be taking on board to actually prevent getting bitten in the first place? What's the advice here?
The first and utmost important is to be aware of whenever the seafarer by plane, when planning to be embarked, or by ship is reaching an area where is a risk of malaria. These areas are quite well known and described, and there are publications on the WHO and plenty of publications on the local health authority websites. But that is the utmost, because everything else relates to that. The first one, the second is, how can I protect myself? So there are plenty of substances and creams and sprays you can use to protect your skin to make it, let's say, less attractive to the mosquitoes. There is the wearing of long sleeves, if possible, avoiding being out in the dark, and especially surrounding lights in the dark. These are, let's say, very simple measures compared to the mosquito net you have mentioned. And just a remark, as you have mentioned, Hong Kong, bear in mind that in Singapore, so far I know, more or less every evening they go with steam, with some substances in to get the replication of mosquitoes limited. And there are even controls of the households if the households are properly handling potential risk of mosquitoes.
Oh, that is interesting. I didn't know. So they do, the authorities do that in Singapore at night and around. Okay.
And let's say a very well-known example is, let's say, some containers or boxes or old wires on deck of ships where simply some water and fluid is in the tropic areas and in the risk areas might be a perfect place for reproduction of the mosquitoes. So you may have even the potential to grow themselves on your ship. And that's why the maintenance and the care of the surface of the ship is even very important.
Looking at the challenges in treating and preventing malaria amongst seafarers, you raised a point there. Yes, that you've got a container on deck of a ship. It's got some tools in it, got a bit of water in it, and suddenly you've got mosquitoes in there. Just something as simple as that. There are a lot of challenges in not only changing a mindset towards it, changing an attitude towards it, but also then in treating the actual condition itself. Do you want to go into a little bit on that? I mean, very much maybe from a sort of, what companies can start to do as far as changing the mindset of their board crew as well as their ship management teams. Then how it comes to actually identifying and treating the problem we need to get to.
Now, let's say what we usually recommend is, let's say a stepwise process. So first, there should be an instance, and then best indeed the ship owner or the ship management company to raise awareness. Usually we call it to have some kind of standard or procedure, which first makes the seafarer aware, okay, by this voyage you will enter into a malaria risk area. The second is tell about simple preventive measures, as I've just mentioned before. The third one is the provision and the offer of pharmaceutical prevention. So there are medications available. Those should be used before entering a malaria risk area.
Because we used to talk about quinine tablets, didn't we, beforehand or something, taking them in advance. Was it quinine?
Yeah, that has formerly been the case, but there are several substances like malarone, doxycycline, mefloquine, and mostly doxycycline, mefloquine are available on the ships. Those may be taken. But indeed, as a ship owner, you can't force the seafarers to take it. But at least they should be aware of, and they should be taught about options of preventing getting infected with malaria. What we frequently see that the seafarers simply avoid taking additional medications just on a preventative measure.
Yeah.
Let's face it, to a certain extent, I can understand that. And it is a very individual decision. As a company, you can't force anybody to do so. But at least they should know an appropriate stock of the medication should be on board. And the last point, indeed, is when somebody is potentially infected by malaria, let's say the medical approach is always more or less the same. The case history, the diagnostic, and the treatment. And especially on commercial ships, we do have a more or less complete lack of any diagnostic tools. Even there are rapid tests available. Those are very simple. There are very few ship owners carrying them on board their ships. And indeed, a proper diagnostic is always a key for an appropriate treatment.
That's interesting because, you're coming on to the point of how well stocked the medical chest is on board ship. Does it have the right medication, but also, as you say, diagnostic tools and ways of actually, testing the seafarers to make sure there's more need to be done on that side of it, do you think? Yes, because the industry forever gets criticised for medicines being out of date and everything.
Absolutely. And especially, I can only underline what I've said before. Let's say it this way. First instance, usually malaria appears from the symptomatics, possibly quite similar to a common cold.
Right.
So when will you start a medical treatment with substances known for potential quite substantial side effects? You will do so at least when you've proven that there is a malaria. But currently we do have no option, despite the fact that, as I said before, rapid tests are available. And let's say, at least here with us, they are available for about €2 each. So that is not a big effort. I know there are some limitations by the expiry time, but they are available, and there would be, to me, a substantial advantage in getting an early detection and proper treatment realized. The second is the vast majority carries, let's say, doxycycline and mefloquine on board the ships. For some reasons, mefloquine is even longer recommended to use for treatment of malaria, and doxycycline is recommended to be used in a combination. That is quite difficult. The background is that Malarone, which would be possible for the prophylaxis and the treatment, is simply more expensive for a good reason. Definitely lots of space for improvement.
So if a seafarer's showing symptoms, what should they do? What's the sort of the steps that they should take on board ship? Because it's such a debilitating disease, isn't it? I mean, if it takes hold.
Absolutely. We generally tend to say, whenever you have any case of doubt, rather earlier than later, contact any kind of telemedical support service. That is the first. The second is, and that refers to what has been said earlier, if I'm aware, okay, I have been last week in, let's say, Lagos, Nigeria, and by all of a sudden I develop high fever and pain in my joints and muscles, at least out of this history, the seafarers should be aware that this potentially might be a malaria. Contact any medical assistance service rather, as I said, rather earlier than later, because the last port of call, where they have been last, the symptoms, all of this is something to put into place to form a mosaic where you say, okay, there's a high probability of having malaria, and rather earlier start an anti-malaria treatment than later, because malaria is known for the possibility to deteriorate very quickly. And as I said, with fatalities every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in the UK, we had one of the sort of famous TV stars. She developed malaria, and it's a sort of disease that keeps coming back, doesn't it, after periods of time? Is that correct as well? That it will sort of, you'll get over it, and then it can actually recur later on in life. Is that right or not? Is that an urban myth?
That can happen if not properly treated. Malaria is in general a disease. Let's say, there's malaria tertiana, malaria quartana. The names are coming from where formerly the peaks of fever have been observed. So every 3 or every 4 days. So you may think it's done as the fever disappears and comes back 3 or 4 days later again. That is actually typical due to the circle of reproduction of the parasite inside the erythrocyte.
So looking at the industry itself, and they've got a lot of responsibility when they are employing seafarers on board their ship, whether that's a crew manager as a ship owner or whatever. I mean, and days like this, the World Malaria Day are very good, focuses the attention and gets people like us today talking about it and talking about what is a very, very important issue. Do you think shipping is doing enough to tackle it? Is it things like malaria high enough up on the shipping industry's agenda, up there with, diet or fitness or mental health? Mental health is a big issue at the moment, but something like malaria, does that need to really, really be focused on more by the shipping industry, would you say?
Sean, the general answer is yes. As you have said, there are so many points where the shipping industry is asked to pay more attention to. What answer do you expect from a doctor? So indeed, it's our profession to care about the people, right? So it means, at least by now, we have no ships without seafarers. So we have to take care about the seafarers. Definitely. And to maintain their health and to get them back home, healthy as they have left the home and their families, I think even rarely happening should be tackled and take responsibility for. And I can only repeat, what we as a telemedical service provider observe is that often we suffer a lack of diagnostic tools. And it's always to us and in collaboration with our clients to find the right balance between the frequency of occurrence, the potential risk, and the investment to be made to lower the risk or even to delete it.
Yeah.
But malaria, I think it's quite an easy step. The very simple things are three. Make the seafarers aware of the risk and the easy preventative measures, bring the appropriate medication on board, and bring some malaria rapid tests on board so that it easily and quickly could be proven or ruled out. Ruled out is not as safe as the proof, but at least it's worth to get some of the tests on board.
Just touching a little bit on the work that you do at Marine Medical Solutions as well, and you're dealing with the seafarers and you're dealing with the medical issues there. Are you detecting seafarers and our crews generally healthy? I mean, how are you seeing the seafarers generally? Not necessarily malaria now, but just general health and what have you. Do they look after themselves? Do they strive for maybe more opportunity to get more fitness on board ship? Is that diet okay? What are you hearing about when you're talking to the industry and the seafarers and what have you?
I think probably seafarers are the most frequently health-checked population on Earth.
Right.
As they have to pass the pre-employment medical exam on a very regular basis and dependent on the profiles used and the given regulations by flag state, ship owner, P&I clubs that may differ, but in general, they frequently are seen by a doctor and examined. So in general, I would say, okay, they are in general in quite a good shape. The second option, the second question, part of the question is even more difficult. There's a lot of advice given, and I perceive it very often with a raised finger. You have to exercise more. You have to keep diet. You have to suspend drinking alcohol and cigarettes. And all of this is indeed correct. But I think it's up to us as medics, as health-related specialists, as ship owners, to find a way to win them for. Just think about the circumstances. They are on board for the ships for months, or very long times. And think about how to compensate the lack of, let's say, simply sensitive and experience of senses, taste, being touched, all of this. So all of this generates an even psychological and personal environment where we all know this very well, looking for substitutes. And the utmost available is food. All of us know that fat is the best transmitter of taste. So it is really an effort to be taken to figure out how to cook in a tasteful and healthy manner at the same time. And I appreciate a lot the activities of some companies having special courses for their cooks, how to do exactly this. But again, I can only repeat, it's up to us to think about strategies, how to win them for, rather to teach them you have to.
But it's a tough nut to crack, isn't it? You know, because you've got a ship that's at sea for a long period of time. You've got ship owners or vessels that need to adhere to a per meal budget. You've got the need for fresh food. And also you've got diet requirements. You've got, certain nationalities that favor certain types of food that might be high in fat content or starch or sugars or whatever.
Absolutely.
And that causes problems like that. I mean, really, the question here is are things with this? I mean, are you happy that they are improving? The younger generation is very, very fitness focused, more so than certainly my generation would probably were, and they're more focused on good diet. Is that something you're smiling? Is that something that you're seeing in the industry or not?
Well, first thing, I think we are probably the same generation. Maybe I'm a little older.
Well, you certainly look a lot better than I do anyway.
Even here we have to think about where it does come from. Let's say for our generation, we have been taught that plates full of food are something very good.
Yeah.
They have to be eaten up to the end. And if you don't eat it completely, you have to stay on the table until the moment you have eaten it all. That's how we grew up. That has been, all of this, I think, came out of the history of, let's say, the history of war and the lack of food.
Yeah.
And it's overcompensating. And that is how our parents grew up. By now, finally, we can offer our children big plates fully stuffed with food. That has changed, not necessarily for all areas. And indeed, the knowledge about influence of food on health, on mental health, has developed a lot. And I agree that the younger generations mostly are more aware and more sensitive to this. I'm not sure whether this really applies on a global scale. I think certainly for Europe it's the case, but it interferes very much with local circumstances, with the culture of food, with the culture of eating, and the culture of cooking. And that's why, let's say, when I follow the results of pre-embarkation medical exams we review, I'm not necessarily completely convinced that your statement towards the younger generation really applies completely on the global scale.
Yeah, carry on. To what extent?
One more sentence, Sean. What definitely applies is the expectation of younger generations towards the care given to them for health, for nutrition. That indeed has raised a lot, with good reasons.
And I think really the industry needs to take note of that. It's got a big recruitment issue ahead of itself. It needs to attract the younger generation into the industry. Yep. It's got to do a lot of these things, Yes, it's been an absolute joy talking to you, tapping into your knowledge and your expertise. I mean, I find it fascinating. I'm very, very grateful for days like World Malaria Day, where it gives us an opportunity to focus in on things like this. But I think talking to you generally about the industry and the issues facing sort of seafarer health and well-being will continue to be a major priority for the industry moving forward. We've got to look after these amazing people. Yes, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's been a joy talking to you.
Sean, I thank you a lot. And let's say as a last statement, I absolutely agree. And we do everything we can together with our colleagues from the One Care Group to raise the awareness on the healthcare of the seafarers. And I think there's a lot to come. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.